want to share with you a little something about spiritualism. Now, I know a while back, maybe a year or two ago, we talked about, I presented the principles of Emma Hardinge. Much later that I discovered that those 7 principles are a summarization of all of the previous ones. Because there are actually, I think there were 9 or 10 principles that were given. And this is one of them. And she received this. There are 2 instances where it speaks of her receiving these principles. I don't know if it was once or twice. But they were given, I can't remember the guy's name now. So I'll pass on that. And one of those principles, Robert Owen Dale Sr., came to me just like that. Now there were 2 of them when you read about history, and when you read the history of spiritualism, there were 2 of them, Senior and Junior. Senior was the one who provided a place for the Reverend Irving to go to. He was a Quaker minister. And the Indians, the souls of Indians, began visiting some of the Quaker churches there. And it didn't sit well with some of them. And he and his group were put out of the church, which became a common event for spiritualism. And he made available a hall for them to have their services at and to continue with this. But anyway, he gave this for his son. And this is one of them. You shall not follow the example of any person or set of people or obey any teachings or acts of any theory as your rule of life that is not in strict accordance with your highest sense of right. Now, I have a lot of problems with this particular one, not following it, but it creates a lot of problems with others. Because there are certain things that I will not agree to. One of them is keeping out a single person from an organization for personal reasons. To me, that's just wrong. Another one is keeping a whole group of people out because they do something that's a little different than you. They chose a different lifestyle than what you live or what I live. And I'm referring to those people who prefer to be with, well, that's the wrong way to put it. I'm referring to those people known as lesbians, gays, and transsexuals. They're no different than we are. This inherent need to be with someone who is like-minded, who is like yourself in many ways is natural. And we'll talk about that later, because that's part of today's discussion. But with this particular principle that was given, it makes very good sense, at least to myself. Would anyone like to comment?
I imagine back then that was probably late 1900s, late 1890s, where progressive thinking was widespread.
Actually,
No, the way they were taught, the way they interpreted their Bibles was all that segregation.
yeah, when you're talking about the traditional religion of the time, yes. But progressive thinking, keep in mind, the Civil War was based on progressive thinking.
That's true too.
I mean, the whole concept of slavery was accepted from the onset, from the time they began to settle in this country. Slavery was okay. In fact, if I recall, I think they started trading in slaves in the 1500s. I don't recall if it was the Dutch that began doing that, or if it was one of the other countries. Now, I'm really drawing back in my history class when I was in grade school. But slavery was an acceptable thing. Trading it was acceptable. And then we have the Civil War, which was all centered on not necessarily emancipating the slaves, but moving them from the South, not into the North, to Canada. That was progressive thinking. The abolitionist movement was progressive thinking. The people who started pulling spiritualism together were progressive thinkers. It's hard to imagine that equality is always considered a progressive idea. Even today, equality is not something that people embrace. They're fearful of it. They're fearful of losing their identity. They're fearful of losing their livelihood. Interesting. And actually, I didn't say where I drew this from, which is from Seacorn, which was tracts on spiritualism. It was published in 1872, so there you go. But the principle is, you shall not follow the example of any person or set of people, or obey any teaching or acts or any theory as your rule of life that is not in strict accordance with your highest sense of right. Notice it does not say for your highest good, but your highest sense of right, which means it's progressive, it's evolving, it's growing. What is okay with you today may not have been yesterday. I know I can attest to that. So.
And it also doesn't leave out those whose innate, whatever, highest sense of right includes, if your daughter disgraces the family, chop off her head. Mm-hmm. I mean, it includes that thinking as well.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Because it's your highest right. What you believe to be your truth, that's what it's based on. In other words, it's telling you that if you think it's wrong, don't compromise. Walk away, don't associate. Only do what you feel is right. And what you feel is right is always going to change. Because once somebody kicks dirt in your face for whatever reason, you are never ever again going to kick dirt in somebody else's face for the same reason. Make sense? Any other comments? And I would like to thank you for allowing me to share this with you.